On my teacher training course with Maharishi in Majorca, Spain, in 1971 and 72, there were about 1,000 of us there. The movement chartered a 747 to take us to Majorca. Remember those? In the lobby before takeoff, I saw my dear friend Peter Moldavan, and he taught the first TM course in my hometown in Chattanooga. And that was a course that I had set up as a meditator. I was so happy to see Peter again. He flew in from his home base in Atlanta and taught TM to about 30 people that weekend. We're connected on Facebook. He lives in New York City, in Manhattan. I learned later from Maharishi that when heaven descends to earth, it's called Satyug, when the gods and angels will walk on earth. So what I experienced in my bedroom that day, in the video I made, I described it in the video I made yesterday. That experience must have been a taste of that heaven on earth. And my 5 months in Majorca were somewhat the same. Maharishi lectured to us every day, and he'd walk down the aisle, people would give him flowers, and he would walk up the steps to the stage, and he'd be just overcome with this big load of flowers. In my vision, I described, I was living in the eternal. But after a few minutes, the experience started to fade. And Maharishi, sitting there in my room, promised me that heaven was coming to earth in my lifetime. And that very soon the world we now know, with all of its suffering, will vanish and be completely forgotten. Because the experience of this new world will be so powerful and blissful that it overshadows the past, blots it out. And after a while, we lose interest in that past altogether. We won't remember any of this, unless you want to, because you get anything you want there. This vision I had was not a dream. It was far more real than what I'm experiencing right now. And I found validation for this experience in the ancient Vedic literature. The seers, the rishis, who lived in the ancient Vedic age, were enlightened and wrote about this experience. And although they were scattered all over India at that time, every description I read was identical to the others who had written about it. And yet, they all lived so far apart that they never met. So, all those rishis could not be making it up. The sounds that they saw took shape. And this was the original version of Sanskrit. These rishis could see it. They were seers. They could see it as text. It's in 4 enormous volumes: Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharva Veda. The 10th book of the first one, Rig Veda, begins like this. First, I'll explain one thing. The first word in all of the Vedas is Agni. Agni means fire. In the Romance languages, we get the word ignite from Agni. And of course, ignition, lighting something. So here's the first verse of not the first book, but the 10th the 10th book, called the 10th Mandala. And it goes like this. The great fire at the beginning of the dawn has sprung aloft, and issuing forth from the darkness comes with radiance. Agni, the bright-bodied, as soon as born, fills all dwellings with shining light. And the whole book is an elaboration of praise for this light of God. The rishis were so highly developed that they could take their awareness deep inside and experience infinite silence. And then the silence would faintly start to vibrate into those sounds. Sounds that took shape into characters known today as the Sanskrit language. The first form of Sanskrit, which is not used today. Only rarely, actually, by the Nadi readers who can read the older Sanskrit. And they give that knowledge to their son. A son cannot read that older Sanskrit, but the father performs a ceremony with him, and it's spoken in Sanskrit. And after the ceremony, his son can read the older Sanskrit, just like that. To have the Nadi read, you sit with him, he looks into the ancient Nadi book, and he can find your story of your life written there thousands of years ago. The seers knew who would come to hear this Nadi read, and they put only those people in the Nadi. And they memorized these sounds. I wrote these sounds down, the seers did, similar to the Book of Bhrigu. The Book of Bhrigu is scattered all over India, actually. It's many, many volumes written down by Sage Bhrigu hundreds of thousands of years ago. And he knew who would come to have the book read to them. So you go to one of these libraries in India, and they greet you at the door because they know when you're going to arrive. And you go into the room, and the correct volume, out of hundreds of volumes they have, the correct volume is lying on the table, opened, with your life story in it. And it can tell you your name, your other name if you changed your name. It can tell you the names of your parents and of your children and many other details. This is how powerful the seers were in those ancient times. And that is coming for us when Satyug arrives.